trying to see if we can put it up there.
Oh.
It's all good.
All right, looks like we're ready to go. So welcome to the City Council Oversight Committee meeting of Thursday, October 12th, 2023. We have 2 items on our agenda for this afternoon, and we will start with an emergency shelter update, and I will recognize April Dozier to give us an update.
Does it matter which chair I sit in?
No.
I never think about the camera. So I don't have a lot of stuff to talk about. I'd rather use what time we have to talk about what Lance and Jason are here to talk about. I sent you guys reports. I know we didn't meet last month, but you had August numbers. For September, you can see our shelters is staying steadily full. We're serving about 52 people a night, which if you've been in recently, that's the most overflow beds we could get into the building safely. We turn away about 15 people per day, and that's just the ones that present to shelter. We know a lot of people tell us that they don't even go because the shelter's always full, so they don't even try to make it there. I was looking at some numbers for total, from day one, November 1st. We've housed 499 unique people who were homeless at least one day during that time frame. I think that some of those people were homeless for a short period of time. They just needed a bed to sleep in so they could get to their next stop. And then they go on their way and usually don't need things from us. That's very normal. That's probably the most common type of homelessness we see. But for us, since November 1st, we, through our funding, have housed 64 people out of the shelter into permanent housing. And we've actually lost 5 of our guests due to death. So seeing a lot of activity happening. The case managers have started really developing in-depth housing plans with all of our guests. We've separated into teams so that, beds 1 through 10 have a specific case manager who they can work with several times a week too. Our first goals are just things like making sure everybody has an ID, everybody has a social security card, everybody has a birth certificate. And when they need those things, we have vouchers to help provide them. And then even the Social Security Administration has come to the shelter and process those applications on site. Because as you guys know, we don't have a Social Security office here in Norman any longer. So we've been very successful in helping that. Those are the first steps people need to do to be able to apply for housing resources, because everything that we have through Norman Housing Authority, through our COC, require those documents to be in place. So we're focusing our efforts kind of on that right now. We've been having great luck with that. That's really all I have. Nothing exciting happening over there except good things.
Councilmember Grant?
I was looking at your notes because I've actually had a complaint, not about the tent situation, but there was a situation in the roof updraft gazebo. Sounds like a similar thing. It was a young couple came to us having been homeless in a tent for more than a year. They had woken up the night before with a stranger coming into their tent yelling at them for sleeping. Do you know where that happened?
That was, no, I don't know specifically.
I just thought it was interesting because the person who told me about the gazebo incident was actually a resident who was thinking about calling the police on whoever was thought to be maybe another neighbor in the neighborhood went and yelled at these folks.
Yeah,
but
we're seeing a lot of that. We're hearing a lot of those stories.
That people are coming because they decided it would be safer inside.
It's no longer safe for people. So there have been people going through Andrews Park, and if people are sleeping in the park, they wake them up and scream at them, and so there's a lot of abusive things happening.
Do they say it's specific people, like the same folks?
It's people they don't know, so they're
Okay.
not of the homeless community. They're other people that just don't want them there.
Okay, that's good to know.
Can you tell us, if you have kind of the data on this, but typically how long are people staying at a friend's house?
So
if they come?
I don't have a report that will pull that information out, but we have probably about half of our guests have been staying a long time. We have a handful of people that have been there since day one, and they really need a more intensive kind of housing than is available to them right now. So, but they come in, they stay in their bed, they don't cause problems, they get up and go to food and shelter the next day. Most people come in, stay a few days, get the services that they need, and then get back out. That's why you see we can sleep 50. We've had 500 people there. Obviously, there are not 500 people on the streets of Norman. These are people that become homeless due to situational things like, oh, my wife kicked me out. Now I have to go find a place to stay. They stayed with us a few days, got out on their own.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, like what the mix of why individuals were coming and staying and how, but it sounds to me like, people come, get the support, the services, if it's IDs or birth certificates or, whatever that they need to access different benefits and things. And then once they are able to receive those things, then they are set up in a better kind of way.
Yeah.
So
Everybody's requesting an opportunity to get out. It's just, for some people, that's harder than others.
And I didn't know if it was like on another report, but I seem to remember there were some stats about folks with jobs that were also using the shelter.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to find those because those are those don't come out of HMIS. Those come from case manager logs, and those are all at the shelter. So, but we're all of that stuff that I reported on the first 3 or 4 months is all still happening. It's people getting jobs. People, I told a story the other day that a woman that stays at our shelter, she got up that morning, got dressed. I was at the shelter to close it down, and she was so excited about her job interview. And she runs back into food and shelter after she's gone and just says, "I got the job." And like the whole place just erupted in cheers. It was kind of emotional. So we see a lot of that. It's just HMIS doesn't pull that information for us.
The reason I ask is I ran into somebody at the pantry the other day who's somebody with disability and said their disability wasn't covering enough, and this person had been homeless. So I was just kind of curious, like, what the job prospects were for folks right now.
Yeah, there's lots of job offers out there. They're just all minimum wage level jobs that people can get, and it is not enough money to pay rent. So I met with a man today who got approved for his disability income, and he gets $809 a month. And that's just, you just can't live on that. And so his options for housing are to stay homeless until he can get a housing voucher that'll pay part of his rent for him. But I mean, that's literally his option. I don't know what else we can do for him.
Speaking of vouchers and kind of assistance with those things, I know that we had been talking about us coming up to kind of a cliff with the federal funding that had been available through COVID and rent assistance and all that kind of stuff. Are we starting to see people starting to fall off of that cliff because that funding is going away? And like, what does that situation look like for y'all?
Yeah, so all of that funding is gone. So it's been, those grants ended end of August. You had to have all your funds expended by then. So all of that is gone. There are a couple of things happening. The wait for a housing voucher at the Norman Housing Authority is going up into 9 and 10 months now, if even like that. So if you apply today, you're not going to get a housing voucher for a long, long time. Housing resources for like rent assistance to keep people from becoming homeless are now down to pre-COVID levels. We get $150,000 a year for our whole community, for our whole county, for the whole county, which is just not enough. I mean, that's from, it's HUD funds, and it's called the Emergency Solutions Grant. So, but it passes through the state of Oklahoma. And yeah, those funds are just very, very minimal.
It's the whole county?
The whole county. Yeah, it's allocated to Cleveland County. And so, yeah, those funds will go away very quickly, and we'll be kind of at a precipice of a crisis, really. I just started taking a tick today. This wasn't even in prep for this. It was just kind of listening to our receptionist answer the phone and the number of calls that she had to say, at this time we don't have funding to help with rent or utilities. It was over 50 calls we just took today. And it's like that every day.
Yeah. So, Councilmember Holman.
So we're having to turn people away because there's a high demand. And I would assume that means a lot of the folks that do have a bed probably don't want to lose that.
Right.
And so when it comes to behavior and how folks are behaving at the shelter, my experience would be that they don't want to risk getting kicked
Right.
out, and so
Yeah.
they're not going to behave that way. Is that what you experience too?
Yes, yeah, we don't have a lot of incidences. It's been that way kind of consistently each month that our calls to the police department are very rare that we would actually need to do that. Most months we don't have any incidences requiring police. We see more EMT calls for medical assistance than we do. And then we have, the last couple of months, we've had some mental health breakdowns that we, responded with Central Oklahoma Community Mental Health instead of the police department, and they were successful in getting that person inpatient treatment. So yeah, unless it's kind of a mental health issue, or then yeah, we don't see a lot of behavioral issues at all.
The last report we saw from Norman Police Department, this would be August 29th, was
Right.
20 arrests for the entire year. It was like an average of 1.5 or 2 a month for the shelter.
Yeah,
And under 1% of all arrests made in the city of Norman
right.
are from food and shelter, or from a friend's house. And food and shelter, a friend's house, and Salvation Army combined were
Right.
even a pretty small percent of overall arrests made in the city of Norman. So, in your experience, you mentioned medical calls being frequent.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume mental and physical issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I would definitely like to see more information, maybe next month or going forward, about folks that are working and are what we're seeing with people that have jobs but are not able to afford to live in Norman. Because I know we all know that's been a driving force. Yeah, I couldn't think of anywhere in Norman you could get a 1-bedroom for $800. I mean, then you would have nothing left over. And so, but I think that's an important aspect, that there may be a misconception that everybody staying in here is just doesn't want to work or doesn't want to do anything. But I think what we see is that it is people that do want to work and do, or it's folks that literally cannot. They're mentally or physically disabled, whatever the issue may be. And to me, like I've said, I think without this, I just see 53 more people out on the streets of downtown Norman every night if this shelter didn't exist.
Yeah.
And the folks that are using this are using it because they literally have nowhere else to go. There's no other option. And that's how I viewed it, as we're the last resort for these people. We're it. And if we weren't doing it, they'd just be out there. So I appreciate you sharing this with us every month. I think it's really helpful for the public to understand what circumstances are that people are dealing with. So.
Councilmember Grant.
Also, could I add to that, like maybe with future updates, like a number on people with disabilities? I think that would be very helpful in our conversations.
There's a report that I send that should have that information in it. There's 3 reports I send. One is called a caper.
Okay.
We just switched to a new system, and I did notice some of the reports were difficult to read, and they're working on getting those glitches out. But the caper report will show things like disabilities, self-report. It's all self-reported.
Does that come into this? Well, I was going to say our agenda packet for this just has the September 2023 report and just the stays, and we don't have the other.
You don't have the caper, okay. Well, I do send it, so I'll.
We can ask the city clerk to attach those for us in the future.
Okay.
And then I was just going to ask about the shower situation, because I recognized there was a church that was coming by with a trailer that could do showers, and there was some question about the water hookup. Has that been resolved?
Not to my understanding. Anthony Purinton was going to be visiting with the city manager about that after we talked about it that day that you were with us and Wade was there as well. And then I haven't gotten any further information about that.
We're working on a solution on a place to find where to put the shower bus. The problem is all that water that's collected inside there, we have to make sure that they dispose of the water properly. There's no space out there near the shelter currently where they can dump the water. We just have to make sure that once that water gets dumped, it needs to be put down the correct drains.
Okay.
So we've all heard claims about some folks, the type of folks some folks think are staying there. So we've talked about it on the record. We've talked about it several times actually, but just once again for the record, when someone wants to stay there, they don't just walk in and here's a bed. We don't need to know anything about you or where you're from, right?
Correct,
There
yeah.
is a
We do a full
process.
intake. Yeah, we do a full intake. They have to sign off on our program agreement, which we verbally go through all of the rules, the reasons that they would be asked to leave. So they have to initial and sign off on all of those things. And so, yeah.
And are there any known sex offenders staying there that you know of?
Not that we found, because people don't self-report that, and we do ask it, but we do search it. That's
Right.
one of the things that they do is search the list and see if they can identify that. And then, we've not had to ask anybody to leave yet for that reason.
And that's something that Norman Police Department is updating regularly. They know who they all are, and you have an idea of who
Yeah,
these individuals
ideally, they know everybody that's in Norman, but that can be a challenge as well, because maybe they come in and don't update their address or something. But yes, we check the Norman Police Department list.
are. And if one did stay there, there hasn't been any problem that has been known.
Right.
It's been created by somebody.
No, we've not had any reports of like sexual inappropriate behavior in any way, not.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have an update from Jason Olson about the updates to the building.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce our new construction and facility manager, Lance Harper. He just started within the last month, and so he kind of got one of his first projects is working on getting the homeless shelter expanded and make sure that we have the proper fire suppression and meet code inside that building. And he's been working on it pretty diligently in the past few weeks, so we'll let him kind of talk about all his plans and whatnot. We just got this literally back from the architect like an hour ago. We were hoping to put it back up on the screen, but we didn't get it in time.
It's taking a little time. If you know now, the shelter's in 3 buildings.
Yeah.
So we were trying to attack, how can we keep this so we can, refurbish what we need to and not disrupt, and keep as many people in there as we can. So it's taken us a while trying to move things around, do our due diligence on existing, the heat and air, electrical service. So what we finally come down to is moving everything to the far east building. Adding a second entrance, so we'll have a male and female entrance on this. Our electrical there is good. HVAC is good for half. We'd only have to add probably about a 5-ton unit on the north side. What we're thinking is, and I've been talking to April, as long as we can move stuff around, we'll probably demo into half of this north side of the building. It's the back half's open anyway. We'll get it ready. She can move people in there. We'll swap out. We'll attack the south end. And I'm visiting with April, and there's a few changes that we'll have to do on here. So this has been kind of quick. We're trying to figure out from 3 and we got to this 1. But this shows, anywhere from 120 to 140 beds are possible. And that could change plus or minus a little bit, but I think 120 would be minimum. With this design, and I think we can probably hit maybe 130 easily with some tote storage areas. And we only show 1 intake office right now. And I was talking to the architect. We really want to do a separate one. I think everyone wants a separate one too. So as they come in, the men and women's will have a room they can do their intake privately, go through. So that'll lead up just a little bit of room. We'd add a couple bathrooms. I was over there just a little bit ago, making sure that the existing sewer there will handle what we have, and I think it will. We'll get everything back ADA compliant, and it's a pretty simple design. It's just basically a box with the center part with observation offices and their linen storage and small storage area. Sides will be new sheetrock. We'll do a drop-in ceiling, which looks like so far is going to be the cheapest with LED lighting, and then safety lighting at night. It should be a pretty quick process. We'll bring in the sprinkler system off Gray Street. So we'll lease, like I said, some of these beds will have to go away, but I still think we're about 120. We can bring it in, the sprinkler system on that the southeast side. Put the sprinkler system in, but our plan is to have that able to tee into the next building for whatever use the city uses for the next building. So trying to think ahead, you know what uses this building can be, years down the road, but do things right. But I think it's a pretty quick turnaround. And looking at the 3 buildings, I think it's our best option. I'm still waiting on my asbestos report, but I'll be calling on that, pushing on that hard as soon as I get that back, and hopefully it's clear. We can proceed fairly quickly. Our plan on flooring is simply sand and seal the concrete floor. It's quick, it's easy to clean up. It shouldn't, once we seal it, it shouldn't be permeable for any, if there's somebody that throws up or gets sick or something, they can, clean it, pretty quickly. So, it's pretty decent design. It's one we come up that I think will work best. April kind of likes it, and like I said, she's going to have more input on where I need to move things around. She saw my hand drawing just the other day, so this one looks a little bit better for her.
Yeah.
So we're gaining.
I just want to point out one thing. So even though this says new exit door, we're moving both entrance and exits to the east side of the building and off of Gray Street. So, so the sidewalk won't be an issue any longer.
So that's the way we're looking at it.
Yes.
So you, I think, kind of mentioned how we're phasing this. So what is the timeline, and how quickly could we be, in the full space?
The asbestos comes back clean, and we can move fairly quickly. We could actually start on this north half, within 2 weeks easily. You're looking about a 30-day max build on that. So like I said, this is already gutted area. We'll just be putting up walls, building our bathrooms, and getting our heat and air set up in that area. The front part take a little longer, so we have a little more demo to do in there. But I think once we got them into this section, we can house the women in the 2 existing buildings fairly quick, and we're probably looking at 60 days turnaround on that south side.
And just want to note that by just using this one building instead of doing over 2 like we were talking about, there is the potential, we're not going to lose any time, so we can be able to move people around, so we still have shelters going through the whole process.
Yeah, so we'll stay open for the 52 beds that we're currently operating out until we're ready to kind of expand out. Well, I think that's a positive, thing on the timeline, because that we were worried that potentially we might have to, shut down while sprinkler systems get in there and everything. So I'm really glad to hear that we'll be able to continue through and just phase it in.
I think it'll phase out pretty well.
Councilmember Grant.
Just curious, what is the cost? Like, how much is this?
We haven't gone through any of that bid process just of yet, so that probably add a few more weeks into that timeline.
And
Once we get everything finalized on drawings and get our asbestos tests, and we'll start working with contractors, and just depending where those bids come in, and if they're over a certain level, then we have to
And is this
go
out of
through a more
the
stringent.
original appropriation for 718, or how does this work?
That's ideally, as long as Daryl is able to move that money, which I'm guessing he'll be okay, since y'all are okay with it. I assume we can use that 718 money to make this improvements.
What about the money that we had already appropriated for renovations?
That's
to
the money I'm
78?
talking about. It's the
Okay,
500,000.
and then what about the,
Sale.
we have to, I guess, ask questions about the sale, because that's an additional,
That'll be an additional $500,000.
yeah,
When we get that money, council would need to appropriate.
okay. If need be, depending on the cost.
And I only
We don't
asked-
anticipate this going past that original 500,000.
I only asked that because, like, there aren't showers or kennels here, but if we wanted to come back and do that, because it's taking a while to find our permanent location, we could do that, or,
Yeah, plumbing and kennels, I think get that's way more expensive, construction and permit processing than just this, but yeah, anything's possible with funding.
okay, and we're not touching couch, that's the building that is getting sprinkled with future, kind of ambiguous future for that, but,
No design plans over at Couch.
I would just like to throw in, I'd like to change the awnings, like if we could get that done too. So,
We're aware of that. I don't know if we'll change them, but it might be possible to give them a facelift of some kind.
yeah.
The fenced area here, is that the bicycle situation that I talked about?
You talked about, so I told him to just draw something on there
Okay.
so you could see it on plan.
Okay.
Is that where the bikes are being stored?
We currently store bikes inside in one of the rooms we don't use for sleeping, but we won't have that space inside any longer. So a secure fenced area would be good. I just didn't know if that was a seating area for people or the bikes, but.
That was, the bike
Yeah,
was
good.
what the plan was.
So is the seating area more over here then?
It's would be directly at the bottom. That's where those,
Oh, okay.
those big
Gotcha.
tables are. Which will be nicer in this design because we can observe it better.
Okay. Awesome. Well, any other questions from committee members? Okay, thank you so much for the update. We're really excited to see this move forward and to potentially, double or over double our capacity to goal, really, in a few months. Okay, we will move on to item number 2, which is a continued discussion regarding the City of Norman's boards, commissions, and committees. It's been maybe a year since
Over a year.
Or 4, they've been discussing.
but I mean, a year since we've seen an update. I know we were waiting for the recodification and all of that stuff, so really interested to see where we're at now.
Well, me too. Catherine assigned this to me, and I've never read every boards and commissions ordinance, and now I have. I do want to very quickly introduce Ashlyn Wilkerson. She's our newest attorney, and so she will be popping in and out of meetings. She's going to be working with parks a lot, and so we're very happy to have an OU, a Norman girl, Norman High graduate, OU undergrad, and OU law school.
Fantastic.
So we're excited to have her, and I wanted to introduce her to
Me and
everybody.
Councilmember Montoya, both Norman High also.
So I didn't know you graduated, but I said, no, Councilmember Holman. But anyway, we're really excited to have, when we tell her about parks or streets, she knows what we're talking about. She grew up here. Anyway, I wanted to introduce her. Okay, so, yeah, I got boards and commissions and committees. And Catherine assigned this to me. I started looking at it, and I've had this question before, like, what's the difference between a board or a commission or a committee? That always kind of intrigued me. So, sad, I guess that intrigues lawyers, the difference between those things. So I did put a little bit of that information in there, and I think you could define them a little different any way you look at it. But some are by statute, some are by ordinance or resolutions. I think, from what I understand and found, boards and commissions are kind of synonymous. They could be interchangeable, but boards are and all three of these really sound alike. But boards are groups of persons having managerial, supervisory, investigatory, and advisory powers. Commissions are people entrusted by the government or another official body with authority to do something. And usually there may be experts or professionals in there, somebody with some relevant experience. And then committees are delegated just to consider or to take action on to report matters. And they can also have temporary committees like an ad hoc committee. And we always do want to have committee members that have some knowledge or experience in the issue. And what I do want to say, and if there's citizens here, we could not operate this without our citizens that volunteer a lot of time to be on these committees. And so we appreciate that. Boards, commissions, and committees are either recommendatory. They're not binding. That's to advise or suggest. Oversight is just to watch over and direct in order to ensure a satisfactory outcome or of a performance. Advisory has the power to make some recommendations, but they may not take enforcement action or enforcing them. But quasi judicial, like say, for example, our Historic District Commission. That's like a proceeding conducted by an administrative or official of the organization that's similar to a court proceeding or hearing. So those types do have more than just recommending things to city council. I looked over all the information Catherine provided about prior meetings. And she had some, I didn't go back to the very first meeting on how it was all got down to the last meeting, which was last August, I think. And this is what, from what my understanding of everything I've read is, originally there'd been discussion about consolidating the Greenbelt Commission and Planning Commission, and then make Planning Commission appointments ward specific. By August of '22, there was not really any support to consolidate those two commissions, but they did want to make the Planning Commission ward specific. And in the packet I provided, let me back up real quick. In the packet also, this is Brenda's. That was a really good list of all the boards and commissions that we have, and that was provided to me by Brenda. So I've gone in and made some draft ordinances or draft changes of how we could do this, and they were all attached. And we would just need to put in the Planning Commission that some of the appointments need to be ward specific. And your packet shows that. There may need to be a little tweaking when we get down to the final on that, but there's where we're at on that one. Oops. The next one was to consolidate the tree board, the bike advisory board committee, and the board of parks committee. Well, when August rolled around, it was no support to consolidate all three. There was consensus to consolidate the tree board and the parks. That would mean the current tree board would be repealed, but we'd need to find a way to, make sure that the next vacancy in the parks would perhaps be with somebody with an expertise in forestry, urban forestry, or had been on the tree board. But that would be one consequence of combining those two commissions, is the current tree board would be no longer, and neither would the members that are on the tree board. So keep that in mind. The next one I know a little bit about. I've been on the Animal Welfare Oversight Committee as a liaison since 15 years or something, even before the last shelter. And it was made by resolution in 2002-03. That would need to be repealed. And it was not done by ordinance, or it was kind of a different way. They were wanting to, before we even built our new shelter, enhance at the time the Denise, now I lost her last name, adoption center, and they wanted a group of people to kind of watch over that. It was never really codified. It's never had any terms or limits. We have people who are totally devoted, as we all know about the Animal Welfare Committee, but some have been on it almost the whole time. And so when we codify this and repeal the resolution, there's going to be some work to be done on how do we get all new board members? How, do we keep some that we already have? How are we going to phase them out? And because I know one of the members, I think, has literally been there the whole time, and he still loves it, and he's got a great contribution. But this is the only board in the city that never had any term limits, because it was really never originally done to be that type of a board. I did some research throughout the country, lots of animal oversight boards in lots of different cities. And when you look in your packet, and I did the draft for the duties and powers of the board, it was pretty similar to other cities. I'm going to back up real quick. There is a red part, some more work to be done in the tree board, planning, parks board on some permitting for trees. So there's still work to be done on that. So that is the with the animal oversight. That's going to take some talking to the current committee. They're going to need to be advised this is happening. I don't think there'll be any pushback on that. There'll be a lot that won't want to leave the board, so we're going to have some discussions on it. Exactly the best way to do that for members that have been extremely committed to our animals in Norman and we're very committed to our shelter and getting the shelter built and a lot of extra stuff for the shelter. They're, as you all know, they're a very, they're a great group of volunteers for that committee.
So, I mean, with that, wouldn't there just, would one possibility be that we appoint the people that are currently serving and then their time clock starts now, right?
Well, it would be hard to rotate them all at one time. So we would maybe have to, I put a little bit of that in there, maybe we could say the two longest would rotate off first, and then somehow like that. I think we'd have to look at exactly when they came on. But we would never want them all to rotate off at the same time.
That makes sense.
We need their experience on there. I don't think we want to just start with all brand new members of the Animal Oversight Committee.
Right.
So that's going to take a little thought and maybe some discussion with them. We do have a few newer members, but when I say newer members, I mean 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
So that's still some discussion, but I have drafted the proposed ordinance on that. And we do want to be able to keep on there, and we currently do, like a veterinarian, somebody from local animal welfare organizations, and we did want some from the rural area. And when I put on there, that should be taken out. I've got a member of city council, but that is not a board member.
Councilman Grant.
If memory serves, also that committee doesn't have everybody appointed, right? There's still some vacancies.
There are some vacancies because, and I wasn't able to ask Brenda that, she's off this week, but I think we'd been working on this boards and commissions, and we thought it maybe would have moved maybe a little faster, and then, I'm not sure, but I think we were thinking we need to get that, we knew this was moving this direction. We did the other night, didn't have a quorum, but that was very rare.
I was just wondering, maybe before we fill those vacancies, we might have some term limits for it. So anybody new coming on, we've got a process.
Well, I believe the process would be just like anybody who wants to be on a board or commission or committee makes application to the city.
Well, I mean, I think what they're saying is that until we're ready and we have the new codification, we don't bring on any
Oh, okay, I
new board
misunderstood
members. And then once we have whatever our structure is going to be, then we can start
Right.
backfilling
Right.
those positions.
But that is going to be.
What you were saying?
Okay, I misunderstood that. So that one, I mean, I think it's good, some of them are not gonna wanna leave. But, I also know that group pretty well, and they won't leave. They may leave the committee, but they certainly will not leave as volunteers at the shelter, volunteers in Norman, for animals. I know it won't, they'll still do their hard work.
I'm just curious about the term limit. So it's when they're done, they could get reappointed, or would they have to wait a while and then could come back?
We want them all to be the same rules for all the other boards and commissions. I believe you have to be off a year before you can be reconsidered. I may be wrong on the time frame, but, and then you can have year limits and the number of terms you can serve before you have to step back and then maybe reapply.
Okay.
The next two are pretty easy ones. There was support for increasing the membership in the Board of Adjustment. That was, I made those draft corrections or amendments on the ordinance, and also for the Norman election from 5 to 7 members. So there was support for that. That looked like, except for this last item, all the major changes after all the discussion, it really didn't come down to a lot of changes. There was also discussion about senior issues, transportation budget, and core Norman development. From the notes I read at the last meeting, it was all decided that those can be taken care of in current committees, that we didn't need to make more special ones. The last one I do want to talk a little bit about, because I know a lot about it, because I'm the one who does Norman Youth Council and has for some time. Our name, Norman Youth Council, yeah, we're not a council. The students come and we spend each month learning about each department. Now, Oklahoma City has a youth council, but they're managed by some youth leadership exchange. It's not a city, it's another agency that helps do that. Our current intern was on the youth council in Broken Arrow, and theirs is pretty robust, and they went to a conference, but city council members ran that. I'm like, okay, that'd be good. So I don't know where that one wants to go. I think the students like what we're doing now, but if the council wants us to look further, I found a lot of information about how to set one up. They do have a youth council conference every year in DC, so you could expand it.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have recommendations based on, I mean, leading that program for a long time, or do you think that it's something that is similar to like our Citizens Academy that we have now that Tiffany is running, and we could have one that is a youth Citizens Academy or something like that, like because it seems like it's running similarly where they get information from all of the departments and things like that, or is your recommendation to make it more robust? I'm not gonna volunteer or volunteer any of the council to take on another task to run something like that, but
I mean,
What-
I
what do
don't
you
think
think?
I would have time to make it expanded. I think the word council is a little misleading, that it could be more like a Citizens Academy, and that's really kind of how it's ran. It could be more of a youth academy.
academy.
The kids that are involved, they're in Tomorrow's Leaders, they're in Spud or Tiger Palooza. They're busy kids, and I don't know if I could, if they could handle it either. Oh, they could, because they're all just awesome, but.
Councilmember Holman?
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion about the name or not, but I would, if it was possible, I'd like to see the youth council be more, have some kind of advisory ability coming from their perspective to share their opinion with the council about things that we're dealing with, and that they could offer as a group that they might have ideas they'd want to share with us.
I did find in Florida there was a guide for creating one. I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm just the time frame involved. If we could another nonprofit or connection with the school, I'm not really sure how to do that. I mean, I know I wouldn't have time to develop a new one. I think for this one, it's let's keep thinking about it, and maybe we could add a component to it that they do get to have one of their projects all year in addition to learning about the city, that they find one topic that they want to make some changes in or make some recommendations. Maybe we could kind of integrate it and add a little bit more, but not make it a full-blown youth council.
Maybe find out from them or maybe past participants too, like what do you wish this had been, or what other ways would you have liked to have been involved? Because I love that they get to go around and see everything and get familiar with city staff and different facilities we have, but it would be kind of interesting to see if they wanted to be more involved.
I'll ask that for them too. On their application, we do ask them, why are you joining? What do you want to do? What are some three things about Norman? Not the majority, over half will say they're concerned about the homeless situation in Norman, one way or the other. They have concerns about the safety of Norman and speeding on the roads and that type of thing. And they want to know more about parks, and so they've got some good thoughts. But I'll fish that out with them.
So I'm wondering too if there's potential where they have these issue areas that they want to learn more about or that they're passionate about. Is there a way that I know that time frame is always challenging, and you said they're always very involved students and doing a bunch of things, but maybe there's some connection points to getting them, not maybe as like a voting member or anything on the boards and commissions, but like assigning them to like come and see what it's like if they want to know about homelessness. Like we talk about the emergency shelter here, and having them come and sit in on our meetings, or if they care about parks, like going to Parks Board, or like there could be some other ways for them to give some input through the structures that we already potentially have. So I mean, yeah, obviously it sounds like we're really still workshopping, but
Right.
I do agree with Councilmember Holman that I would like to see more from them, in the sense that like we would like to hear from them, like what are they caring about, what do they want to see change, how can they get involved. because we know the sooner you get involved with things like this, then this is, voting is habit forming, and so is civic engagement. And if they can get involved now, then they're going to be much better off and more engaged than other people might be at later ages. So
And I didn't realize our intern had actually done, went through the program in Broken Arrow, so I can talk to him more about it and exactly see. It may just be a different type of student involvement. Some students may still want some type of an academy thing, and maybe it's just a separate deal that you don't have that many students to they're more of a working group. I think we could probably have a hybrid.
Yeah.
Add a little bit more to it, and as the time goes on, their time is tough. They come for 1 hour and they're rushing in and they're rushing out.
yeah.
And getting them to come to other meetings. I've thought things like, should I ask, are you interested in whatever? Would you like to shadow, our attorney's office one day, or a council member have lunch with you? I mean, I've thought of thinking that is there other ways for them to just in little increments get a little bit more. I mean, with Councilmember Holman and Montoya, that you've been graduates of Norman High, I think, that kind of thing, that maybe they'd want to have a lunch and learn. I think there's lots of possibilities. It's just coming up with them and following through. And
Yeah, and I wonder too, just, us and others, like if we put it out there that, we're looking for maybe a nonprofit or some other kind of, leadership group to help facilitate this, like you said that they do in other places. Like it might give us opportunity and more capacity to do some of these, a more robust type of program, because I understand that your time is
But I can spend this
constrained.
year, I mean, we've started this year, we're not going to change it yet. I've got through all of May. So that'll just be something in my time I'll kind of start. I've pulled a lot of stuff that I haven't read it all the way through. So I'll just work on that.
Okay.
So on this, it's just let us know, how do you want us to proceed on this? These are really drafts. I mean, they're not, but do we need to get to the full council to make decisions, or how Catherine wants me to proceed with this?
Do you have a recommendation on that? I mean, we've been kicking all of this stuff around in this committee for years.
Yes.
At this point. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I think we're getting there, personally.
I think maybe it's time to bring it to council. I mean, we'll still work on finalizing the language. It's not final yet, I don't think. Something else I wanted to remind you guys of is the Greenbelt Commission had presented probably
Right.
pre-COVID. Long enough that my email
Right.
was not accessible because we don't go back that far. To some changes to the Greenbelt. They brought that up again. I know they're gonna be hitting you guys up.
I forgot about that.
I'm not sure where council wants to go on that, and that might be a meaty enough topic that we consider that separate of this.
So what about the Greenbelt Commission, sorry?
They have suggested some rewrites that would expand their authority over development applications. And so I don't recall getting, at that time, we knew recodification was coming, we knew we were doing this board's commission's discussion, and so I think it kind of stalled on that basis, but that's something that we'll have to.
So is it, because I do agree that having a more robust conversation about those specific changes that they're asking for would be helpful. Do we think that comes to a committee before going to full council?
Yeah, I think so.
But maybe we're ready for the other pieces to go to a full council. Does that feel?
And these I think are, they're substantive in terms of structure, but you're not changing the duties as much as
Right.
as that one
Yeah.
is proposed to do.
Any other comments about the timeline process moving forward with sending the others forward? Okay.
I need a timeline, or I get busy with something else and something else jumps in front, so
Yeah.
I work on deadlines.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't set the study
Yeah,
session
I don't
We
agenda,
can work
but
with Brenda to see
if we
what dates
can-
are available
yeah,
in the next month or so.
yeah.
As far as the animal welfare, I think that's gonna be one of our biggest discussions is, we have another meeting November 12th. Is this something that we even should just tell them it's coming? I have not mentioned it because it's never been on an agenda, but I don't mind mentioning it to them and starting to
I mean, I think it probably makes sense for them to start thinking about what that's gonna look like, especially with your concerns about, we can't appoint all and then them all roll off at the same time. We're gonna need to kind of stage some of that and figure out, and so they might need to start be thinking amongst themselves, like who might be ready to, roll off and they've served their time, or maybe they, the first term that they have is a shortened term so that we can stage stuff. So if they can start getting that through, in conversations, I think that's probably a really good idea.
I mean, Mark might be ready to go, but he doesn't look like it to me. He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
It's an excellent group, but but we do need to get it up to full vote too again, and then they need to follow. We need to get it through the term so other people have an opportunity to serve on that.
Yeah. Councilmember Holman.
I would just mention that part of the discussion we've had over the years is that we do want to give other people an opportunity to serve, but it can also be sometimes difficult to find people that want to do it and will actually show up and commit to doing it. So that's where it kind of gets, you take people that are willing to do it, like Mr. Howery for 15 years or so. You want to give somebody the opportunity, but it's also nice having somebody that has shown that they're willing to commit to it that long and who has historic knowledge about what's happened in that committee or whatever over the years. So some way to strike a balance of where we still have people on there that know what's going on and have a history, but are, I agree, being able to provide an opportunity for more people to participate too. But like I said,
I'll
sometimes
talk
it
to
can
Mark
be,
and Becca
yeah.
myself first,
And I served on it as the council
and then I'll get
liaison
their
for 2
ideas.
years.
I think we had talked at one point, Councilmember Holman, about adding some language about even if there's a term limit, but there's not another person with the interest or the expertise, then
Yeah.
that person may continue. Because things like the Norman Housing Authority, where it requires very specific expertise, they've had the same board for maybe ever. That's, you don't want to lose that expertise, and there may not be enough interest in the
Anybody
community
else?
to jump in.
Yeah, I'll get Becca and Mark's
So-
idea. I'll get a hold. But I'm sure I know them. They'll both have opinions about it. So.
I know ECAB is one of those other ones that takes some commitment to, and knowledge to do it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
They've managed great things. I mean, they have pushed and got a lot of stuff done down there.
Okay, do you have the direction that you need?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Any other comments about this item, council? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
I think we want it to be another 6